This might actually work. I've got a new background. Hello, greetings and welcome to my podcast. My name is Liz. I live on the outskirts of London and I am a knitter and wannabe sewist. And I would love to share my crafty life with you. If you're coming back and have watched previous episodes, thank you. If you are new, thank you. It is good to have you here, whoever you are and wherever you come from. I'm going to start this episode, as I do with all episodes, with a disclaimer. I don't know what is going to come out of my mouth. I have notes, but that's not a guarantee of anything. So I may end up swearing, I may end up talking about adult topics, adult themes, or it may just be a load of unmitigated blather. Whatever that is, enter at your own caution. So yes, as you can see, I have a new backdrop behind me. I thought it's far more interesting than just a wall. This is my knitting bookshelf. It is a bookshelf with all of my knitting books on, hence the name. Top shelf, that's still to be sorted out. This shelf here, the little vanity shelf, that's got my Swift on. This here, this is where I keep all my tote bags. That blue tin there is sock knitting stuff. The white box is my scales for measuring out small amounts of yarn for my memory blanket. And then we've got books here, books down there. And although you can't see it a bit further down, we've got Percy Pig tin, which is where I keep all of my stitch markers. And Kevin, who was a knitted toy. It was a pack free on the front of a magazine. I think the pattern is by Amanda Berry. If I can find it, I will link it down below. So yeah, this is my knitting bookshelf, and then completely out of sight are two more shelves full of knitting books. The red box that you can see, if I can get my finger in the right place, that red box there is my Christmas socks box, and that white box is my ball winder. So yes, finally I have got my knitting vlog or podcast or video channel or whatever you want to call it in front of my knitting bookshelf. The picture on the wall there is of Sam West, the actor in Hamlet, back somewhere in the early 2000s. I want to say 2001, 2001, about that. That's actually quite a long time ago, 20 years. That's worrying. But yes, I hung around after the show and got him to sign the front of my programme. This is while I was still at university. And then I took the programme to the library, and one of the librarians was able to do a colour photocopy for me. So that is the colour photocopy there. I'm not entirely sure where the real programme is, but that's the copy of the signed programme from Hamlet. Wow. Also, worth pointing out, because why wouldn't I? Because this is the way my mind works. For anybody who watches the TV show Pointless in the UK, it's a quiz show. You have to give answers, but you go further in the game if you give answers with the lowest points. It's always, we asked 100 people, we gave 100 people 100 seconds to name vegetables. And then if you name something like a potato and 67 people said potato is a vegetable, you get 67 points. But then if you say, I don't know, anchovy. No, anchovy isn't a potato. Anchovy isn't a potato. Anchovy isn't even a vegetable. But if you said something like mange tout and only 5 people had said mange tout, then you get 5 points and go through to the next round. Anyway, all that's to say, we were watching Pointless this week, and one of the questions was actors who have played Hamlet for the Royal Shakespeare Company. And I have a Pointless answer on my wall. There you go. That was absolutely nothing to do with knitting or sewing. And everything to do with my mind being weird. I did warn you. At the moment, James is going to Asda. There are things I want to talk about which are a surprise from him. So either I'm going to have to talk very quickly, or I'm going to have to do this kind of backwards. So record the bit I don't want him to hear first, and then record the bit I don't mind him hearing and edit all together. So either way, it's going to be slightly chaotic, but that's life. Now, because I'm in the spare room, I'm having to rely on natural light more than I did when I was recording in the sitting room. So yeah, that's just one of these things I'm going to have to put up with. The clicking sound you may be able to hear in the background is our little sunflower nicknamed Brains. It's she's a sunflower with a little solar panel on the front, and she dances her way through the sunshine. Always makes me smile. And because she's in the window looking out, it means that every time I come back home, I can see her essentially dancing at me out of the window, as you do if you're a plastic sunflower. So quite a lot seems to have happened since I last recorded. James has had his first dose of the COVID vaccination, which I was quite excited about, probably more excited than he was. The Duke of Edinburgh died, so we went up to see the 41 gun salute the day after he died, because one of the locations was near us, a bus ride away. And we've had another wedding anniversary, so we went up to the local park and had a picnic lunch. And there was a lady there who came over and saw me knitting my socks and said, "Gosh, it's so nice to see a crafter." And we got chatting, and she said she used to do she does quilting, and she's part of a quilting group, but doing it all electronic or via Zoom is not quite the same as doing it face to face. And on hearing her saying that she did quilting, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "Oh, my grandmother used to do that," which is the one thing it really pisses me off when people say about knitters. So I did apologise to her, and her response was, "Well, that's okay. I am old." And it's like, so lovely. Such a lovely response. But yeah, that was a nice little interaction in the park a couple of weeks ago. Guides has started up as well. We're now doing face-to-face guiding every other weekend, again in the local park, because guiding rules do not allow us to meet face-to-face indoors yet. But it's such a, I won't say a relief, a massive relief to be able to see the girls face-to-face. And to see them interacting with each other, and for us to have individual conversations with one or two girls rather than doing it all via Zoom. I mean, yeah, Zoom was a means to an end, but it's not ideal. It is just so much better for everybody for us to all be meeting face to face. Now, obviously, being spring, people are getting out in their gardens, doing the weeding, doing the digging, and James and I are no different. Now, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago now, we noticed that Asda was selling little gnomes, so little, only about that high, on stakes. You shove them into the ground. And James got into the habit of buying gnomes and then just deciding to leave them in the planters and leave them in the plant pots and see how long it took for me to notice. So I started to try and do that this year. I bought one, I left it out on Easter Day, I think it was, for him. But at the same time, I bought myself this one. Yes, it's a granny, but she is knitting. I think there is a bigger version of this, which is just no. But for that, I was like, fantastic. I have a gnome. I have a knitting gnome. I like that. I'm going to do that. Only, unbeknownst to me, when I bought James his ladybird gnome for Easter Day, he then thought, "Oh, I know. I'm going to buy a gnome for Lizzie." And he bought me this one. So yeah, neither gnome is going to be going into the garden. I think they're far too nice for that. I need to work out a way to display them on my bookshelf. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how that's going to happen. I think I need to find a way of clipping the stems somehow and putting them into plaster or some kind of solid base. But yes, 2 knitting grannies have now come to live in our household. I think I might have to have that as the podcast episode. But conveniently, talking about guiding leads us very nicely into whips. For Mother's Day last year, now this is UK Mothering Sunday, which happens during Lent. It's not the same as American Mother's Day, which happens later on in the spring. For Mothering Sunday last year, 2020, we had a session with the guides where they were all able to paint an item of pottery for their mothers that was then taken away by the lady who was running the session, who fired them all to fix the paints and then glazed them. And what was supposed to happen was we were going to go along to the meeting, everybody got their bit of china back, and that was given to respective mothers for Mothering Sunday. What actually happened was we were due to go back to guides and the country went into lockdown and the guides meeting was cancelled. Which means for the large part of a year, this mug that I made has been sitting in a friend's house. If this is focusing properly, you will see that it says, knit on with confidence and hope through all crises. It is a quotation by Elizabeth Zimmerman, and that is my attempt. Yeah, if I do that so that light isn't shining on, that makes it a bit easier to see, doesn't it? But that there is my attempt at a ball of yarn. And then kind of coloured on the rim around the top. This turned out so much better than I was expecting it to. I've only used it once so far because we're not sure if it can go in the dishwasher, and it's just far easier to use mugs which can go in the dishwasher because it's finish them, shove them in the machine, and they, you know, there's no extra effort in getting them cleaned. But yeah, this I am very pleased with, very proud of. And my first pair, or next pair of knitted items are these socks. It is the Fairy Lights pattern by Winnick Mum, and the yarn is Anna and Carlos Garden? Midnight Garden. I've knit some socks, basically. Yeah, this is my finished object. I've knit some socks. It's that simple. These are going to be the second ones in my Christmas box of socks. So yeah, cuff down, red, green, gorgeous. The next thing, which is halfway between a finished object and a work in progress, is my patchwork blanket, my mitered squared blanket. So one of my creative aims for 2021 was to put in the rainbow panel on my patchwork blanket. But what I did not realise is that there was quite a bit of knitting that needed to be done first before I could put the rainbow section in. And I have now got to the point where I can do that. So all the other squares that needed to be knitted before the rainbow section got put in, that's done. So the section of the blanket that I was aiming to complete is completed.
Last time I talked about doing
that bit of it is finished, but at the same time,
columns
this is only half
on
a
the
blanket.
right hand side, just
so
to
the
make it a
blanket
bit
as a
wider,
whole is
which
a work
what
in
I've done.
progress.
So all of these ones here are new.
And again, rather than trying to hold it up and show you what's going on, I've recorded a little bit which I'll put in here. And that orange stripe there on the turquoise and orange, that's also one I've dyed myself. So yeah, 2 new columns. And then all of the ones here with stitch markers on, because I couldn't remember which ones I'd done and which ones I hadn't done last time. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are all new. And then this bit here, where conveniently we have the flag of Kenya, is where the beginning of the rainbow block is going to go in the middle of the blanket. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. That's a beautifully coloured blanket. And now for the proper works in progress. The first pair are this pair of socks. The yarn is by Twinkly Knits. Now when I bought the yarn, it did come with a contrasting green, but it was a much lighter green, and actually I wanted a slightly darker green to go with the red stripes. So this green is Mayflower One Cloth from Hobby. And again, it is the Fairy Lights pattern, with a nice big heel flap there because I have nice big heels. And that is another one for my Christmas box of socks. Now, normally when I knit socks, I split the ball of yarn in half. I knit my sock concurrently, so there's 2 balls on the go at the same time. What I have done with this yarn instead, I kept the ball as one. So I knit cuffs for both, then the leg of one, then the leg of the second one, then the heel flap of one, then the heel flap of the second one, joined to carry on and do the foot. And then when I finish the foot, I'm going to start the foot of the second one. So it's not being knitted concurrently in the way that I'm used to, which for me is slightly strange, slightly out of my comfort zone. There is probably going to be enough of this left over that I can do a pair of green socks, but with stripy toes, cuffs and heels. And then hopefully that will be this ball nicely used up, every last scrap, because it is such a lovely yarn. It's really soft to knit on the hands. The colours are bright, you know, really clear, sharp lines there. So yeah, it's been a joy to knit with. We'll not talk about the heel flap and picking up the stitches and having to take ages and ages to decrease for the gusset, because no, that's not the focus. This is just a lovely, lovely yarn to knit with. And my second whip, which is another pair of socks, are being knit concurrently the way I'm used to. Now, do you remember the yellow socks that I cast on for the inauguration, for Joe Biden's inauguration? That I think somehow I'd managed to increase by one by mistake. I messed up the heel flap and had to undo it all. Then I managed to pick up the stitches for the gusset decrease before turning the heel, so I had to unpick it again. Then I turned the heel and it went wrong, so I had to unpick it again. Then I managed to turn the heel and pick up the stitches correctly, and then halfway through knitting the foot, the yarn had a knot in it, so I had to undo it and sort of rejoin the yarn. And then after all that, I found that the sock didn't fit. So those socks now look like this. Which is, yeah, not quite what I was expecting either. Oh, look, hello, other sock. So because the cuffs were a different colour from the rest of the yellow, I basically ripped all the socks back to the cuff and started a new pair. So technically these were the socks that I cast on during Joe Biden's inauguration. The yarn is Regia Candy, which was a set of sock yarns they've done for Christmas. You can still buy them from websites in Germany, although I'm having a slight problem with getting websites from Germany to ship to the UK. I will talk about that later. But yes, the red picks up the red stripe in there. This is the colourway Zimstern, which is Shooting Star. I was thinking about doing the heel flap in camel, which I hope or thought or suspected might be a similar colour to this, that goldy brown colour. However, nowhere that I can find has got it in stock, and I also wonder if that's going to make the socks a bit too dark and too dour, so I probably am going to do the heel flap in red. I'm undecided, it has to be said, I'm undecided, but that is probably what I'm going to do. But yes, this is how I'm used to knitting my socks concurrently. It all comes from travelling to and from work on the train. That if you're in a commuter train, particularly a London commuter train where you're all up like this and you can't move your elbows, and then you've got somebody's bag banging in your face because they're standing up in the aisle and it all gets very cramped. It's not the place to be sorting out complicated mistakes. So, you know, dropped stitches or things that need to be unpicked. It's just not a convenient place to do any of that. So I started doing concurrent socks, partly so they matched, but also if there was a problem on sock 1, I could just put it to one side and pick up sock 2 and I would still have some knitting for my journey. And now the fun bit, or the bit I always like, is the stash enhancement. Firstly, I have been doing more dyeing of yarn. So red, white and blue. I'm nicknaming this one Breakaway Day, as in the 4th of July. More purple. And this one is a yellow, which I then put flecks of blue and red on, which probably isn't at all visible on the camera. But yeah, that's a slightly more subtle one. There you go. Obviously it looks green because it's blue on yellow, but it was actually blue to start with. And then finally I did that one. So this was blue Kool-Aid, which looked way bright blue. And so I put in I think the remains of the purple I had to try and over dye it to see what happened, what came out. It looks like that, which is very similar to that one. So this one here, dyed blue with Kool-Aid, and then when all of that was absorbed, purple was put into the water, so it absorbed the purple. This one was the one I had last time, which I dyed blue and then sprinkled Kool-Aid over and put it in the microwave and heated it. I think I prefer this one, the slightly more subtle one, but these two are too similar to go into my blanket. So what I'm going to do, weigh them, see which one I have the most of. I think probably this one, and then that one will be used as a mini for heels, toes and cuffs, and then that one will be put into the blanket, or vice versa. Don't know. I have talked about the European Jamboree 2020 before on the podcast. I think I've done it during Vlogmas and Vlogtober. But in 2020, I was due to go to the European Jamboree as a leader, as part of a group of girls from Girl Guiding Laser, London's South East region. Obviously, because of COVID, it was postponed. But between the organisers deciding to postpone the Jamboree and end of October, I think it was, end of September, end of October, contingents were given the option to withdraw if they wanted to. Kind of no blames, don't worry about it. We understand this is unprecedented times. If you wish to withdraw, say so. And Girl Guiding decided they were going to withdraw because they couldn't get the right level of insurance cover, and they didn't want to take the financial risk of things going wrong, I mean badly wrong, and them and the charity being out of pocket to try and sort it out. Eminently sensible. This is charity money we're talking about. But unfortunately, because so many people withdrew from the Jamboree ended up being cancelled, which means that for people like me who have put money into going to the Jamboree, because that's what we were planning to do, we now have a refund coming our way. Long explanation. I've had some money in my bank account. And I told James beforehand, I am going to spend this on Christmas sock yarn. Actually more difficult than you think. There are several websites I've seen in Germany which either don't ship to the UK or say they ship internationally, but somehow that doesn't include the UK. There is one shop I've found which I thought, oh, that's great, they've got what I want, I've ordered it, and they said, well, it's collection only and we don't ship to the UK, so when are you going to come and collect? It's like, well, I can't because I'm not in Germany. Another shop I found which say they do ship to the UK, but then had a whole load of other sock yarn which I didn't know existed, which I also want to buy, but they're not replying to my emails about how to actually get stuff to the UK. So all that's to say is I don't have as much stash as I would like. But one of the ones I did get is this, which is Opal Joy. The thing is, if you look at the picture, it looks kind of green and white, and I looked at that and thought, oh, that's kind of Christmassy. But then when I got it out of the packet, out of the bag, out of the wrapping, it actually looks slightly more blue, bluey green and pink, rather than just plain green. So I will have to see how it knits up. I mean, the thing with Opal, they do gorgeous sock yarn. So whatever happens, this is going to be a gorgeous sock. I suspect in the long run I'm going to have so many Christmassy socks that some of them are going to be deemed more Christmassy than others, and therefore will be moved into everyday sock rotation. And if this ends up in everyday sock rotation, I am not going to complain, because it is an absolutely gorgeous yarn, and I'm sure it is going to make a very, very gorgeous sock. So looking ahead to May, the Dodgy Bag Mail, which is run by Crochet Luna and Ali from the Little Drops of Wonderful podcast, has started. I entered it last year. I made one bag which I completed within the month, and I think one bag which I completed just after. I have a whole pile of fabric and a whole pile of ideas of bags I would like to make this month. I am not going to be able to complete all of them. I know that much, and that's fine. I have absolutely no problem with that. I'd much rather have more ideas than I have time for than the other way round. So yeah, I will keep you updated with my progress on that one. It was also one of my aims for 2021 to make an item of clothing. So I now have a pattern. I have the fabric. I have spare polycotton for now this is the thing. You've got a toil and a toil, or toil and twill, or twill and toil. It's the mock-up of the outfit that you make to see whether it fits and where you need to make adjustments. I've got the fabric for that, not the flouncy, fluffy stuff that you put on big dresses that make you look like a princess. I've also got a second fabric, which was the fabric I wanted to use, but there's not quite enough of it unless I do a pattern hack. Now, this is the bit I don't want James to hear. Next month, because next month is June, is James's birthday, and he has wanted me to make him a sweater. It's something he's kept asking for. When are you going to make me a sweater? Have you made me a sweater? What about making me a sweater? And I've finally decided now is the time to make the sweater and give it to him as a birthday present. Which means that whereas I'm knitting it, I'm not going to be able to share it on the podcast. A, because there is a risk of him overhearing me as I talk about it. And B, there is a risk of him seeing the video as I'm editing it. So what I think I'm going to have to do is record bits as I go along and then put it all together in an episode once it's been made up and once it's been gifted to him. And the pattern I'm choosing to use, for some reason, is this vintage one. So James is very clear on what he wants. He wants a maroon burgundy kind of deep red colour V-neck in 4-ply. This is the only 4-ply pattern I have that I can find, which is fine, but because it's a vintage pattern, it's all in inches rather than centimetres, which is what I'm used to. I'm this weird generation. I know my height in feet, but my weight in metric, in kilos. When I bake, I do it in metric, but then when talking about distances, I do it in imperial, miles rather than kilometers. I'm a bit of a messed up brain that way. Anyway, this is all in imperial, so this is all done in inches rather than centimeters, which is not something I'm really used to. But it's also got the needle sizes as the old sizes rather than in millimeters. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, just dealing with the pattern in addition to the challenge of knitting a sweater. But that is one of the next things I have planned. I don't even know where I got the pattern from. It's just one of these ones that's ended up in my pile, in my collection. Look at that. That boy's got lipstick on. That boy there absolutely has lipstick on. Ridiculous. So, yes. I feel I need to read this in RP. Using number 11 needles, cast on 110 stitches and work 1.5 inches in knit 1, purl 1, rib. Change to number 9 needles and continue in stocking stitch until work measures 13.5 inches, ending with a purl row. So, yeah, that's going to be fun. I may also do a scan of this and print it off rather than work from this particular copy, because this particular copy is a little bit frail around the edges. I also need to work out what size I'm knitting, because you can't, you know, if you're making a surprise jumper for your husband, you can't just say, darling, can I measure you up? So I think the best way I'm going to have to do it is give him a hug. That's what I did yesterday. I gave him a hug. I worked out where my arms ended, and that's going to be the best judge I can make of measurement. It's just, yeah, that and getting my hands on a couple of sweaters that he owns that fit him, and kind of doing some measuring from them. Much as I love knitting socks, I've knitted 4 this year, all of which are of the same pattern. It's all following the same pattern. Nothing wrong with the pattern, but I need to challenge myself. So I think it's time to knit me a sweater as well. I mean, especially as it's getting in spring into summer, now is the perfect jumper knitting weather, I'm sure. So the pattern I've chosen for me is this one. That's what it looks like. I think it's called Zigzag. I mean, I'll put the name down there when I've actually looked it up. It was in Simply Knitting magazine in 2014. I don't think it's available outside the magazine. I'm not entirely sure. But it is a V-necked striped jumper. And I remember looking at the magazine and thinking, that's really exciting. That's really cool. And I bought the yarn straight off. So I've had the yarn sitting in my stash for, what, 6-7 years now? July 2014. So yeah, 7 years. So that is one of the next things I want to do. But without doubt, the most exciting thing to be looking forward to next month is Unraveled. It's a knitting festival, a real live face-to-face knitting festival, and it's so exciting. So I cannot remember if Unraveled happened last year. It happens in February, so that would have been just before the UK went into lockdown. Obviously, it couldn't happen in February this year, but it is running sort of mid to the end of May. I think it's 21st to the 23rd. But it is being done as a hybrid real life and digital online event. So for those who are able to and want to go and do classes and marketplace face-to-face, they can. But for those who can't travel, don't want to travel, or don't want to do face-to-face for whatever reason, there is also the online version. So I was talking to a friend of mine on Tuesday, and I sort of forgot to mention it, and Wednesday I sort of WhatsApped her and said, oh, I forgot to say last night, Unravel is happening sort of near the end of May. Do you fancy going? And her immediate reply was, real people. So yes, I will be going with my friend Jane, who is one of my oldest friends. I've known her longer than I've been married. She was the person who got me into knitting in the first place. I think she lent me her copy of Stitch and Bitch. I was like, oh, this looks good. And I bought my own, and the rest is history. And the first time and the only time so far I've ever been to Unravel was with Jane for the 10th anniversary of Unravel. Of course, this is the bit that's all going to not make sense if I do this by doing this backwards, because I am recording this backwards. One of my WIP project bags is in the tote bag from Unravel, the 10th anniversary Unravel. That is looking forward to May. These are all the things I have to look forward to. I'm going to try and do a more frequent recording. Thing is, as every podcaster will know, recording takes time, editing takes time, the knitting, so you've got stuff to talk about, takes time. But I've realised that recording things once every month is too infrequent. So I would like to try and shorten that time between episodes. So yeah, that is what I've been doing. This is what I'm planning to do. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks very much for joining me. Bye-bye.